Hi, everyone, and welcome to Career Pivots and Second Acts, the ultimate telesummit for your mid-career transition. I'm your host, Tajan B. Renderis, and it's an honor for me to introduce you all to Randi Bussin. Now, Randi is the founder of Aspire for Success, which is a leading career management company that specializes in executive branding, executive job search, and executive transition, among other things. Randi works with her clients to challenge the status quo, explore new horizons, and help shape their future. She's a sought after speaker, writer, and commentator, and she holds an MBA from INSEAD in France and is also a certified master personal brand strategist, a certified hidden job market coach, and career management coach. Randi, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's always nice to participate in these events, so thank you so much.
Thank you. So today, folks, Randi and I are going to be talking about a little bit around the minutia, some aspects of the minutia of the job search for mid-career professionals who are transitioning, which in some ways looks a little bit different from what one would do as an entry-level professional, for example. So, shall we dive in?
Sure, I'm ready.
All right. Okay, so the first, I guess we can start maybe at the top level of the funnel. From your perspective, what are the major components of the job search for mid-career professional transitioner who's either trying to break into a new role or a new industry, or maybe both?
Okay, so let me start with definitions because I think people have a hard time with this, so I want to break it out. So there's job search and there's career change, and they are different. And career change also includes a component of job search. So let's go back to my example. Job search is I'm a director of sales in a technology company, and I want another job. You're not changing a lot of parameters.
Right.
You're just going back out into the market, trying to find the next level kind of job. Career change is I'm a director of sales and in the tech sector, which could be me actually, was my career change. And I'm sick of being in technology. I'm sick of being in sales, and I have a kid and I want to completely change.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, obviously, first you have to help the client figure out what it is they want, where they're going to go, and then they're going to start looking for it, which is where the job search piece comes in.
Right.
The challenge with job search for mid-career change, think about it. I'm a director of sales in a tech company, and now I want to go into fundraising for a nonprofit.
Right.
You don't bring a lot to the table. You bring some transferable skills. The recruiters over here that you would use in job search are not going to work over here.
Right.
So if you go into fundraising and nonprofit and you go work with a nonprofit recruiter, they're not interested. You're too out of the box for them and it's too hard. So for me, the two things that I really focus on with people doing this kind of transition is one, making sure if you're going into a new field that you have some level of credentialing or training or something to build that credibility. That's the first thing. The second thing is, since we know recruiters are not going to work, there's really only a couple ways to get a role, which is working your hidden job market and your network, and you've got to have experience. You've got to get some kind of practical experience under your belt. So if you're like a director of sales and you want to go into fundraising, if you're out looking for roles and you've never done fundraising at all and have no experience, nobody's going to talk to you.
Right.
So the big thing I focus on with my clients is you got to get some kind of experience under your belt. It could be working on a committee, for a nonprofit, on a fundraising committee. It could be doing a pro bono nonprofit fundraising gig for 3 months. You have to do something to put on your resume.
Yeah.
And I know this from actual experience because I did this, but I didn't know I was doing this. So when I moved out of technology and was working in career services, in the MBA centers, I was actually volunteering my services.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never put it on my resume. And I was having a hard time getting a job. And I was in an informational meeting. I remember this at Wellesley College, and I told the person I was meeting with about this volunteer work I was doing. And he said, well, why is that not on your resume? That should be on your resume, at the top of your resume.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know, as soon as I put it on, I got a job.
Yeah.
So the other, piece to this is a resume that's going to work for, a VP or a director of sales is not going to work for fundraising.
Yep.
And I break all the resume rules when it comes to career change. And if that person had fundraising experience, I would put that first.
Yeah.
Followed by everything else.
Yeah.
So it's not a simple proposition.
Mm-hmm. It's not, yeah, you're right, Randi. It's definitely not simple, but you've highlighted a lot of the important components of exactly what you would need in order to get yourself ready. It does mean that the whole process overall for somebody who's mid-career and transitioning was going to take longer. A lot longer. I at least in my experience anyhow with clients I work with, often many of them are gathering experience over the years and years and years of them pursuing this passion that they now want to translate into a new career, which sometimes expedites things a little bit because they've been pursuing that passion for so long, volunteering on boards and getting the fundraising experience that way for several organizations and kind of pursuing that passion project, which now they want to transition into a career. Which is the ideal situation, I guess.
Yes, that is ideal.
That's ideal.
I have many clients for whom that is not the case. So where they want to go, they have zero experience. So in your situation, that's easier because you have a lot you can leverage in terms of the transferable skills and the branding.
Yeah.
Where the client did want to go into fundraising and they've never done it and they have no experience, it makes it even more complicated.
Yeah.
So, job search is not easy either, especially in a city like Boston where you have a lot of really qualified candidates. Mm-hmm. And it can still take 6 months, but career change can also take 6 months.
Right. And Randi, you had mentioned the hidden job market and leveraging that. I'm wondering if you can just say a little bit more about what made you mention that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking of this example that I used where if you're a director of sales and technology and you want to go into fundraising, even if you do have a little bit of experience, you're not going to find the job on LinkedIn or Indeed. Because where do you find a job where it says we only want 6 months of experience, but we want, it's just not going to happen. So you have to work your network.
Yeah.
And so that's where letting people in your network know what it is that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. They can keep their ears to the ground. Mm-hmm. Or I remember one client I worked with a couple of years ago. It's kind of similar. She came out of sales, VP of sales at Fidelity, which is financial services, decided to go into fundraising, had zero experience in it. However, we had her working her network out, talking with people. She went to meet with someone she had gone to high school with. He happened to be working in an organization, and they had an opening for fundraising. So, when you're having those kind of, grassroots conversations, you never really know where they're going to go.
Right. Right. This is true. And I guess getting a little bit into some of the minutiae around the job search. In your work, what are some job search tools that you recommend mid-career transitioners take advantage of?
So, there's places like Flex Jobs that offers part-time work, which is also another way to get experience. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Flex Jobs, but they offer, there's another one in Boston, I think, called Flex Moms, where a lot of these organizations have employers offering roles that are 15, 20 hours a week. Mm-hmm. You can get some experience under your belt. There's also what I would call return to work programs. A lot of companies have these programs for moms that have taken time off. So I've done this with some of the moms that I'm working with. If they're doing a career change and they've taken time off, those kind of return to work programs, a lot of the big companies offer those.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a company that kind of does what we do called, I think it's called I Relaunch, and they help moms relaunch. So there's a lot of options out there for part-time work. Consulting is another option, of course, depending on how transferable your skills are. So those are some of the things I look at with people.
Okay. Those are really helpful. I'm definitely familiar with I Relaunch and have worked with folks who've used that and gotten good results with it. But some of the others that you mentioned, I'm not familiar with, but are certainly helpful for folks to dig into. And I'm sure there are others too that might be specific to your particular area, depending on where you are in the country also, right?
Thought of one more thing, if I could add this. I have actually had luck with clients finding part-time work on Craigslist.
Yeah.
For career change.
Huh.
So I have all my clients checking Craigslist because a lot of smaller firms where they might only need someone 10 or 15 hours a week are not going to be on LinkedIn necessarily, or Indeed, and they're posting on Craigslist, and we have found opportunities that way. You have to think out of the box.
Yes, absolutely. I think with a career change like this, being out of the box, you definitely need to be thinking out of the box on every step of the way. I wouldn't have thought of Craigslist, but that makes complete sense when you put that together for sure. Yeah. No, for a lot of folks, as you know, you've experienced career transition at this level yourself. I have, and it's entirely scary for most people. It can be the fear for a lot of people can be totally paralyzing. And so from your perspective, how can the whole job search process for a mid-career transitioner be as graceful, easy, and painless as possible, given what they're up against?
Right. So, as you said, it's a big nut to crack. I like to help the client break it into very small little pieces. Yeah. Because if they see it as pushing a boulder uphill, they're just going to get discouraged.
Yeah.
So, I'm not answering specifically, but I do like to break it into small pieces in terms of, okay, let's get a resume together first that highlights those transferable skills, that highlights your brand, because your personal brand is the same, whether you're in sales or fundraising. Your brand is your brand, right? Once they have a good document and they're able to see that they have things in their past experience that are going to relate to the new field, their confidence level goes up, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And then you have to do the LinkedIn piece. And obviously that's a lot harder for career change because you only have one LinkedIn profile. So pulling that together and weaving the story can be challenging. But I think once people can see the results, then they're more confident and willing to go out and start networking. But you've got to break it into small pieces or people get very overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything else that you feel like is important for mid-career professionals to bear in mind related to this topic that looks a little bit different from entry-level people specifically?
Well, I had an idea. I think it might tie more towards mid-career versus entry, but also goes back to the question you asked earlier. One way to get experience and to get exposure and to build credibility is to volunteer for the professional association in the field in which you want to go.
Yeah.
Back to my example, director of sales and technology now wants to do fundraising in a nonprofit. If that person goes to the professional association, which is the AFP, Association for Fundraising Professionals, and gets on a committee and volunteers their time, people start to see their skills. They start to make connections with people in the industry, and their credibility goes up. And all of a sudden now they've got more opportunities.
Right.
So that would work better, I would think, for someone mid-career than someone who doesn't have a lot of experience, because you don't have that much that you can offer.
Yeah.
That is something I do a lot with people, and that works pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can hear people in the audience kind of wanting to ask this question around timing. So for somebody who's working to build up their experience, whether through volunteer mechanisms, however that might be, before they actually begin the job search for the career transition, what's your general kind of rule of thumb around the timing of that preparation before you actually start really putting your resume out there and pushing hard?
So I've had people do radical career changes with zero experience. It can happen.
Yeah.
But, a couple months, I mean, you have to be able to put something on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to my example. I had been doing that volunteer role only a couple months. And as soon as I put it on my resume, all of a sudden now I become a much more interesting candidate for a career center, because they see I'm volunteering in careers. It doesn't have to be a huge project. It doesn't have to be 9 months.
Yeah.
You cannot learn about a career just by going and getting a certification.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do the work, and you have to try it. And, the other thing that I also have people do is, read as much as possible and talk to as many people as possible, so they really understand what are some of the issues that are, happening in that new field, so that they become a more credible candidate.
Mm-hmm.
I think a couple months is good.
Yeah. And for mid-career professional, once they do start the job search, so they've gotten what they feel like is sufficient experience and they're feeling confident and ready to go out there, are the normal usual channels in terms of looking for a job the same for a mid-career transitioner as it is for an entry-level person?
I think a lot of the pieces are the same. What's not the same is you can't leverage the recruiters and the executive search firms.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to be working your network.
Yeah.
Because you're just not an interesting candidate to a recruiter. You're an out-of-the-box candidate. They don't know what to do with you. They can't place you fast. So that whole channel's gone, which is an important channel.
Yeah.
So what's left is your network and these part-time places like flex jobs and volunteer work. I'm just looking to see what other things I had written down. So a lot of the pieces are the same. I still have my clients put together target lists and, networking lists and working all of those pieces. It's just knowing that that whole recruiter piece is shut down is hard.
Right. This is true. Is there any other advice or any other tidbit that you would want folks who are kind of ready to jump into the actual job search process in this kind of career shift, wanting to know anything else that we haven't mentioned that's important to call out?
I just say think out of the box and break rules. And I know that's probably not a kosher thing to say, but I break every rule on resume writing when it comes to career change. And I put out there what I know the employer is going to want to see, not what I learned in Resume Writing Academy.
Yeah.
The same thing with, looking for opportunities. Think out of the box.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to offer to do an unpaid internship. I've done them myself. And you have to ask people. You can't be shy about it. You have to say, I'm trying to gain experience. I'm really interested in this field. I know I don't have a tremendous amount to offer, but I have taken some training. I have these transferable skills. Would you be willing to let me do an internship? And a lot of companies will say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of this is going to really take folks way outside of their comfort zone.
Yes, it will.
And that's okay. That's really a part of the process. I don't think there's really any way around that. So it's just a matter of, from my perspective anyhow, embracing more and more discomfort.
Sorry, I forgot to shut that off.
It's, to me, it's definitely involves embracing more and more uncomfortable situations, whether that's your fear around asking for an internship or asking for a volunteer experience or even asking for help, networking, informational interviews. All of that may take folks who've been in a steady career for a number of years completely outside of their comfort zone, which is just a part of the process for sure.
Part of it. But I will say, if you've worked with a client for 3, 4, 5 months before they start doing some of this, their confidence will go up and it will be easier for them. And you just have to do baby steps.
Yep. Baby steps, small pieces to push the boulder, little by little.
Uphill.
So, Randi, where's the best place for folks to find you online if they're wanting to hear more? You've shared a lot with us today. That's extremely helpful. Where can folks find you? Where are you most active online?
Yeah, that's a good point. The easiest place is my website, which is www.aspire4for6s.com. I do have a lot of podcasts on my website of career changers. So I've done a lot of podcast interviews of my own career changers, and people find that helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they can find me on LinkedIn, and they just search in the search box, they'll find me.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much again, Randi, for your time, for your wisdom, for your insights, and really specific tools and strategies that are practical and tactical. I think our audience will definitely find all of this helpful. And thank you all for tuning in again. Join us again for the next session. In the meantime, all the interview notes can be found below from our talk here with Randi. Thank you, and we'll see you again in the next session.